You know that feeling, right? You're misting a tropical plant, or maybe even yourself on a super hot day, and for a second, you've created this perfect little humid paradise. But what if I told you that entire feeling, that whole idea, is basically a myth? Let's get into it. So, here's the big question we're tackling. When you're spritzing your plants, are you actually raising the humidity in any way that matters? The answer, I think, is going to surprise you. It might just change how you look at that spray bottle forever. All right, first up, let's dive right into the misting myth itself. We're going to get straight to the point and bust this one wide open. Okay, so I'm not going to beat around the bush here. After a deep dive into the actual physics of it, the conclusion is pretty clear. Using a handheld sprayer to try and raise the humidity in a room is, well, it's a total failure. Plain and simple, it just doesn't work. So the big question is why? Why doesn't it work? I mean, it feels so intuitive, doesn't it? You're literally spraying water into the air. Well, the science behind why it fails really boils down to two main problems that we're about to break down. Yep, it's a real one-two punch of failure. First, the water droplets themselves are just way, way too big and heavy. And second, the actual amount of water you're putting into the air is tiny. I mean, ridiculously small. It's not nearly enough to make a difference. Let's tackle that first problem, the droplet size. And this is where we get into the real physics of it all. See, for water to become humidity, it has to do one thing. It has to evaporate. It has to go from being a liquid to a gas. And whether it can actually do that before it just crashes to the ground, well, that all comes down to its size. So you can see this clear dividing line, right? Really tiny droplets, we're talking less than 50 microns, are so light they can just hang out in the air and evaporate into water vapor. You know, humidity. But the big, heavy droplets from a spray bottle, they're over 100 microns. They're just too heavy. Gravity always wins, and they just fall, wetting your plant's leaves, the floor, whatever's underneath. And this quote, this just says it all. It comes from a technical analysis, and it perfectly illustrates the problem of scale. The superfine vapor-like mist from a real humidifier is like a grape. Those big, clumsy droplets from your spray bottle, they're basketballs. They were never meant to float. They're designed to fall. This chart just lays it all out, crystal clear. Just look at that bottom row. A handheld sprayer makes these big droplets, and its main purpose is just surface wetting. It's designed to spray on things, not to humidify the air around things. Now compare that to the top row. An ultrasonic humidifier makes droplets that are 200 times smaller. It's designed for one thing, sustained humidity. Now here's the kicker. This isn't just ineffective, it can actually be harmful. All of that water falling directly onto your plant's leaves creates this damp, stagnant environment. And you know what loves that? Fungus and bacteria. You could literally be inviting diseases like powdery mildew, thinking you're helping your plant. Okay, so if misting isn't actually raising the humidity, then why does it feel so good? Why are we all so convinced that it's working? Well, this is where things get really interesting because our own biology is playing a trick on us. The main thing misting really does isn't humidification at all. It's something called evaporative cooling. That amazing sensation you feel isn't an increase in moisture, it's a drop in temperature. And we are not talking about a small drop. Under the right conditions, that mist hitting your skin or the air right around you can make the temperature plummet by as much as 10 degrees Celsius. That's nearly 30 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a really powerful and immediate effect. So here's the science, and it's actually pretty cool. For water to evaporate, to turn from a liquid into a gas, it needs energy, and it pulls that energy from its surroundings in the form of heat. It's what's called an endothermic process. So as that mist evaporates off your skin, it's literally sucking the heat away from you, and that's why it feels so instantly cool and refreshing. Now, this is the absolute key to understanding the whole illusion. There are two kinds of humidity. There's absolute humidity, which is just the actual amount of water floating around in the air. Then there's relative humidity. And this one depends on temperature. Colder air simply cannot hold as much water vapor as warm air. So when you cool the air down, the relative percentage of humidity shoots up, even if you haven't added any more water. And that is the trick. Your brain feels that sudden, refreshing coolness and the temporary spike in relative humidity, and it misinterprets it completely. It thinks, aha, more moisture. And that powerful feedback makes us believe we're doing something that works, reinforcing the habit, even when the data shows we're not changing the room's overall humidity one bit.
Okay, so we've busted the myth, we've explained the illusion, so let's move on to what actually works. Let's talk about some smarter ways to humidify. If you really need to raise the humidity for your plants or for yourself, there are much, much better ways to do it.
I want you to just take a look at this number, 18,916. What on earth could that possibly be? Well, it's the number that really drives home the sheer futility of trying to humidify with a spray bottle. And there you have it. You would need to press the trigger on that spray bottle almost 19,000 times a day to put the same amount of water into the air as one single medium-sized home humidifier. The difference in volume is just staggering. It's not even in the same ballpark. So, what should you actually do? Well, the experts are pretty clear. First, use a system that's engineered for the job, like an ultrasonic or steam humidifier. Second, you have to measure. Get a cheap hygrometer so you actually know what your humidity level is. For plants, you can also create little microclimates with a terrarium or even just group them together so they create their own little humidity zone. So, at the end of the day, it all comes down to this. That misting gives you a really nice momentary cooling feeling, but it's totally useless for raising humidity, and it might even be creating a risky environment for your plants. So the next time you reach for that spray bottle, you just have to ask yourself, is this actually helping or could it be hurting?